And then there's Leroy Smith. Now you gotta think that's a myth. You gotta think that's a myth. You gotta think that's a myth.
Of course there'd be a Michael Jordan.
I don't think there's a coach in America, nor elsewhere for that matter, who would not put Michael Jordan on their team.
But would he be the world's greatest?
And are we really supposed to believe that Michael Jordan in high school couldn't get a date, got cut from the varsity team? I mean, this is a sad story.
Yes, I'm the coach who cut Michael as a sophomore. And because we were tight, I got the short end of the stick.
And he remembered what it felt like not to be great.
I'll tell you what motivates you.
Hey, Bennett, what do they call these shoes anyway?
Here's the cool thing about it. I really never had to tell the story because whoever I was with would tell the story.
Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Jordan.
So it was all this energy in the room. It was, when I tell you it was top shelf, it was top shelf. It was amazing. As a player, I was just in awe of being in Springfield. And as a hoop fan, which I am a fan and like a historian, it was just an amazing place to be in.
Thank you.
I was sitting like on the edge of an aisle. Behind me was Dennis Rodman, Tony Kukoc, all these cats. Because I'm gonna tell you, he controls all of that.
Thank you.
He controls all of that. Nobody, it's not random. And then, of course, there was the speech. I felt the room get a little tight.
As I sat up here and I watch all the other recipients stand up here and they give their history and so many things I didn't know about Jerry Sloan. I know he lived on a farm, but I didn't know he was in a small classroom from first grade to the 8th grade. Even David Robinson, obviously I've known David for some time, and I found some things out about him, and even with John, I found some bad things or good things about him. And Coach Smith, the day that he was on the Sports Illustrated and he named 4 starters and he didn't name me, that burned me up. Now they say it was a so-called freeze-out in my rookie season. I wouldn't have never guessed. You're not as good as Magic Johnson, you're not as good as Larry Bird. You're good, but you're not as good as those guys. I had to listen to all this. Jerry Krause was right there, and Jerry's not here. Obviously, I don't know who invited him. I didn't. People that you don't know, relatives coming out of the woodwork. I say Texas not. It's not an iron team, but it's iron win. He said organization wins championships. I said, I didn't see organization playing with the flu. I think I can guard you, I can shut you down, I would love to play against you. Well, you about to get your chance. And from this day forward, if I ever see him in shorts, I'm coming at him. And then there's Leroy Smith. Now you gotta think that's a myth. Leroy Smith was a guy, when I got cut, he made the team on the varsity team. And he's here tonight. He's still the same 6'7" guy. He's not any bigger. His game is about the same. But he started the whole process with me because when he made the team and I didn't, I wanted to prove not just to Leroy Smith, not just to myself, but to the coach who actually picked Leroy over me. I wanted to make sure you understood you made a mistake, dude. And then
September 11th. On September 11th, 2009, I tuned in to see the Basketball Hall of Fame induction ceremony. David Robinson, John Stockton, Jerry Sloan, and many other deserving people were honored that night. But everybody knew it was just a lead-in for the man himself.
We've heard you talk so eloquently in interviews for years. I don't think I've ever heard you give a speech.
At that time, it was universally expected that MJ would be a beacon of grace and gratitude in that hallowed moment. It was the tradition.
I thank my high school coach, Mr. Fox.
To all the guys that I played with, I played against, thank you. Thank you for making me a better person.
The owners, the general managers, the coaches, the media people, every one of you for helping me to become Patrick Ewing.
Have you rehearsed it, and what can we expect?
Hey, let me tell you something, that's been on my mind for the last 7 months. I'm not a big speech giver, I speak from the heart. So what you're gonna see today is, speaking from the heart. Maybe not, customary to what people may think or have heard in the past, but whatever I say is gonna be from my heart and what I believe.
Michael took center stage and did what only he could do. Dunk on everyone.
Pat Riley, you and I, we go way back. I still remember in Hawaii. You remember in Hawaii where you and I was coming in, you were, I guess, leaving, and you decided to stay a couple extra days, but you were in my suite, and they came and they told you had to get out of my suite. And you slid a note underneath my door, although you had to move, you did move. And then there's Buzz Peterson. Now, when I first met Buzz, all I heard about was this kid from Asheville, North Carolina, who's player of the year. I'm thinking, well, he ain't never played against me yet. So how did he become player of the year? Is that some type of media, exposure? Why is this? You think I'm gonna play against Patrick any different than I play against anybody else? No. And then you had your little guy who was on your staff who became the Knicks coach after you, Jeff Van Gundy. Buzz was a great person. It wasn't a fault of his. It was just my competitive nature. I didn't think he could beat me, or he was better than me as a basketball player. And he became my roommate. And from that point on, he became a focal point, not knowingly. He didn't know it.
The backlash was immediate.
Michael Jordan's Hall of Fame talk was the Exxon Valdez of speech.
Once again, he turned the evening into something bordering between vicious and vapid.
Rude, vindictive, and flammable. And that was just when he was trying to be funny.
Adrian Wojnarowski wrote,
Jordan wandered through an unfocused and uninspired speech at Symphony Hall, disparaging people who had little to do with his career. This wasn't a Hall of Fame induction speech, but a bully tripping nerds with lunch trays in the school cafeteria.
But for me, a video producer, part-time YouTuber, husband, dad, streaming-nominated, loser, two-time documentary maker, one-time YMCA dunker, and a huge basketball fan that proudly grew up in the 90s, my thoughts caught on a different thread. This guy. Leroy Smith, huh? Leroy Smith from high school? There's no way this guy is real. Why on earth would he show up to an event just to be publicly humiliated? He changed his name. Right? Yeah, right? Yeah. But more importantly, why did Jordan want to fly out a guy from high school just to tell him that he was a mistake?
Because this was an inside look into the mindset of an icon who'd never let anybody inside before. From what I saw, I'd never want to go back. Yet we couldn't stop watching.
How much did Jordan pay this man? But if he is real, and he's the same actual person from high school, well, then he's got a story.
Sewing, house cleaning.
I always felt that I was going to be a bachelor.
That no one would marry you?
No one would marry me, and I ended up doing my cooking, my dishwashing.
Over the next decade, I thought about Leroy. As my personal curiosity sharply turned into a professional obsession, I would attempt to contact him. I set a Google alert for his name. I made a 5-part series on YouTube specifically about Leroy Smith and how he probably doesn't exist as we know him.
This is the story of a man named Leroy Smith. Leroy Smith does not exist.
But after hundreds and hundreds of Google alerts, none of the Leroy Smiths were the Leroy Smith
I was looking for. Leroy Smith. Leroy. It's not even this guy's name. He doesn't even go by Leroy.
So then, I set another Google alert for what I discovered might be this man's real name. But it didn't stop there. I even made and sold shirts with his face on it, or his name on it with a whale, trying to draw out whoever owned the name Leroy Smith. I even called him a fool.
What fool takes a trip to get mocked?
I tried to send him a letter in the mail, but it seemed Leroy did not want to talk to me or talk about this. Until now, 2024. Now let's look back. One more time.
And then there's Leroy Smith. Now you guys think that's a myth. Leroy Smith was a guy, when I got cut, he made the team on the varsity team. And he's here tonight. He's still the same 6'7" guy. He's not any bigger. Probably his game is about the same. But he started the whole process with me, because when he made the team and I didn't, I wanted to prove not just to Leroy Smith, not just to myself, but to the coach who actually picked Leroy over me. I wanted to make sure you understood you made a mistake, dude.
I tell you, man, I got tons of emails and texts of people saying, yo, dude, why he bring you there and then say that?
Basketball player ever. Who are you to think I can't motivate you? Motivated.
This is my gift to the game.
This is the story of A. Leroy Smith, a man trapped in time as a high school basketball player known for taking Michael Jordan's spot on the varsity team, sending young Michael home to his room to cry and change into a monster.
Into the ball game. Jordan, look at that! Holy! Here comes Michael Jordan on the drive, 5 seconds. Jordan on the drive, right in the lane, 18-footer. Yeah!
Since that day, Michael Jordan would never let the world forget the name.
I say Leroy Smith.
It's 1989.
Even in Detroit, we're done.
And NBA Entertainment released a VHS called Come Fly With Me.
Hi, my name is Michael Jordan. I want you to take a trip with me and discover the secrets that I've known for many years. That man was truly destined to fly.
Come Fly With Me marked a seismic shift in NBA storytelling, as it was the first film produced by NBA Entertainment not centered around an entire team or that year's NBA champion. This one would be all about Mike.
Witness his aerial onslaught as he takes on the rest of the NBA. To get your copy of Come Fly With Me, call 1-800-NBA-TAPE today.
It told the story of Michael Jordan, his upbringing, his challenges, all the way through his second year in the NBA. Sports propaganda at its purest and finest. This tape became the first time that the Michael Jordan cut from the varsity team story was formally presented to the public. Here it is.
As a 5'11" sophomore, young Michael was noticeably absent from the varsity team.
Yes, I'm the coach who cut Michael as a sophomore. We did it because we thought at the time it was the best thing for him and for our basketball program. He was still growing, he was a good ball player, but we didn't think he was good enough yet to to really make the contribution on the varsity that we felt we needed.
Notably, in this telling, Leroy's name was not mentioned, but it would soon be attached. After the record-breaking success of the 1989 release, NBA Entertainment quickly went back to the well.
This is not the type of arena where you usually find Michael Jordan. And no, this is not a Chicago Bulls team picture. It's the cast of Michael Jordan's Playground, Jordan's second entry into the home video market, and his debut as a Hollywood leading man.
This video had everything. New highlights.
Force-up shot to left. Oh, yes! Win. Michael Jordan saves the day.
New sound bites.
The Jordan rules. Is that something you guys made up?
New player interviews.
I can't see 20 years from now anybody saying, oh, he was okay for his time.
And he'd do something, and you'd be like,
New slow jams.
Don't forget, Michael Jordan got cut too.
A music video with dancing. Celebrity cameos. Zack Snyder.
Songs for the video.
It even had a video of its own. The making of Michael Jordan's Playground.
The project has first a little story, a little narrative, where Michael befriends this kid who was just cut from his high school team, similar to what really happened to Michael.
But most importantly, it featured a cinematic interpolation of this same origin story.
I'd like to tell you something. Michael Jordan got cut from his high school team.
I bet you Michael Jordan never even got cut.
Michael Jordan's Playground hit shelves and hotlines in 1990. But within this telling, Michael took the focus away from the school and away from the coach, giving us the name of his original antagonist in this ever-growing allegory.
What are you doing here?
You know who Leroy Smith is?
No.
He's the last guy to make my high school basketball team.
So you did get cut?
My sophomore year. I mean, I really worked on my game. Of course, I grew 4.5 inches, and that didn't hurt at all. You know who Leroy Smith is?
By this point, the idea of Leroy Smith lived entirely within a Michael Jordan story. A story Michael Jordan could not stop telling.
But in high school, the star did not always shine as brightly.
So my friend and I, Leroy Smith, who was about 6'6", 6'7" at the time, and I was maybe 5'9½", we said we were going to try out for the varsity team just to see what happened. And because of Leroy's height, I got the short end of the stick.
But Leroy, the real, living, breathing Leroy, was out of the country when this VHS became the best-selling sports tape of all time, launching the story and his name into a whole new category. Leroy did not know what he would be coming home to, what he had become.
And are we really supposed to believe that Michael Jordan in high school couldn't get a date, no luck with girls, got cut from the varsity team? I mean, this is a sad story.
It sounds sad, but it's true.
But the story itself, as a condensed piece of lore, I was never even sure it happened that way, the way it was told. And countless people have raised this exact question for years, including myself. Questioning the idea of Jordan even being cut, and who was actually responsible for that decision. Was his name not on the list? Or was there just a second list with the people who made JV, because he didn't make the junior varsity team? Is this story a work of fiction? Even Jordan crying in his room afterwards. What
happened?
is fact?
Leroy, you were there. What happened? Here's how it came up. Here's what I think happened, just being in there.
There was 2 lists. Factual. We all had tryouts, and then coach would post the list on the door. You come and you look and see your name on the list. And Michael and I, we met Coach Herring in the 9th grade.
Coach Herring. Now here's a little detour. This is Fred Lynch, forever trapped on VHS, making the claim that he was the coach who cut Michael Jordan. A relatively inconsequential thing to say in the moment of filming. But a burden that would become too large to live down.
Fred Lynch made a mistake a dozen years ago, but today he is famous for it. The only one to ever cut Michael Jordan.
When I saw that, I was like, it wasn't Fred. And even when he said it, yeah, I'm the coach that cut Michael. I was like, no, you're not. Dude, stop. And everybody that knows the story, like, dude, stop.
Fred Lynch, in later years, would admit that he was not the coach.
It was Bob. It was Coach Herring.
Wait, but why? Why did Fred Lynch say?
Yes, I'm the coach that cut Michael as a sophomore.
Thoughts?
Yeah, Fred was the JV coach at the time. He was there at Laney and all through, that time. But Coach Lynch was the JV coach, and I think he coached track and field as well. And maybe during the Come Fly With Me, they couldn't get in contact with Coach Herring.
Okay, this part's a little disputed. Fred would later say that he told the producers of the film that he was not the coach. And he noted that the filmmakers didn't want to hear it. On the other hand, the filmmakers would say, since he was a JV coach, he was probably involved in one way or another in the ultimate decision. Now note, the author of this article, Tom Lake, would conclude in this article that Fred Lynch wasn't even a JV coach at the time and was not even working at Laney High School at the time when they cut Michael Jordan, which is in direct contradiction to what Leroy Smith just said about a minute ago.
Yeah, Fred was the JV coach at the time. He was there at Laney and all through, that time.
And finally, the filmmakers told me that Fred was provided to him, and he was told that Fred was part of the coaching staff. Now, somebody made that call. Maybe Fred wanted the attention. Maybe Coach Pop didn't. I see its innocuous nature in the moment. And maybe it was an innocent, non-journalistically thought out quick fix that would save what would be NBA Entertainment's flagship production. But what we also know, just because something starts off as an innocent mistake, doesn't mean everybody will take it that way.
I wanted to make sure you understood you made a mistake, dude.
And simply being in the orbit of this story would be a lifelong tether to a character in the public's and Michael Jordan's narrative. Fairy tale.
Where were we?
We met Coach Herring in the 9th grade, right, at a basketball camp. And Coach was like, hey, when you guys get to Laney as sophomores, I want you guys to try out for the varsity. And we were, oh, yeah, it's going to be awesome because traditionally sophomores never played varsity. And we both tried out for the team. I'll never forget it. And then at lunchtime, the names of the new team is going to be posted after lunch. Sixth period. Go see if you made the team with that kind of stuff. So we ran down and looked at the list. And sure enough, there was my name. But Michael's name wasn't there. And nothing was said. You're 16, 15. I don't have any emotional, let me give you emotional support. It's like, I'm ecstatic. I'm going to be on the varsity team, and I'm 6'6", 100 pounds wet. And Mike didn't make it. And he tells the story that he went home, and he cried, and he cried, and he cried. He always says it. I never wanted to feel that feeling again. And I think about that as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid, and the disappointment when you don't make something, or you feel and know I'm better than half the team. And I think that's the nugget. That's, like he said, that was the first log
that started to stoke the fire.
And I think that's reality.
And Jordan would continue to flesh out that reality. Almost entirely consuming the name, and concept of Leroy Smith into his fire, and continuing to go back to that spark when he was in need of motivation. On camera and off, Michael would use Leroy.
If someone comes up and asks me, what is your name? I say Leroy Smith, because at that time, I was nobody. I got cut. People knew him before they knew me. So I'd use him as my alias, I guess. Especially when people don't know me or can't recognize me, and they're not sure who I am. And I say Leroy Smith, man, they think about it, and you really look like Michael Jordan. And then I tell them for real.
Here's the cool thing about it. I really never had to tell the story because whoever I was with would tell the story.
When did you realize the name Leroy Smith was no longer just yours?
When I came back from Europe and then Tokyo, it was 89, 90.
Now this is a video store. Come fly with me, the ultimate video on the most exciting athlete in the world today. Every sports fan will want to own the hottest of sports videos. Michael Jordan, come fly with me.
What a difference.
Pick up Come Fly With Me today.
And at the time, you know, internet was not popping like it is. So I used to get these VHS tapes from NBA Entertainment. And they would send them over to Japan, and I would watch highlights, and you know, they used to make all these really cool videos.
Kareem, Reflections from Inside.
That's how I stayed in contact with the NBA and everything that was going on. I got a call from a friend.
He said, yo, man, it's this crazy story going on about you and Jordan.
And I was like, wow, what is it? What is it?
What is it? What is it? What is it?
He was like, oh, yeah, you beat him out in high school and da-da-da-ba-ba.
Yeah, you beat him out in high school.
So when I got back home, that was the story. And I was like, man, it's a story? I had no idea that was a story.
And it was this thing.
And at that point, I was like, okay, how do I navigate this?
I beat Michael Jordan out in 10th grade for the varsity. I made it, and he got cut.
You know, what does that mean, you know, for me or not mean for me? And I kind of just, like I said, my first job when I came from playing was with A6 Tiger Footwear Company, and I did all their basketball marketing. So I was still kind of in that space. So I'm at the All-Star game in Utah, and it's power meeting with all the agents. It's David Falk from Falk Management. It's 3 or 4 other agents, all standing around. So I happen to be walking by, and David Falk says, come on over here, kid. So I go over, and we start talking. And he's like, this is a guy that beat out Michael Jordan. Let me tell you about this guy.
Michael Jordan, let me tell you about this guy.
So that had always been what was going on for years, especially while I was in that space. About that time is when I knew that Leroy Smith was something else. Hence, one of the reasons when I got in entertainment, I went by my first name, which is Harvest.
So I figured.
So that kind of that separated me from the Leroy Smith, and I'm a junior, so it was really paying homage to my father, who's senior. So I went by Harvest, and 6'8" black guy named Harvest. It was a clear line that there are 2 different folks. You know what I mean? One in the sports world and one in the business world. Over years, they weave in and out every now and again.
Then there was Leroy Smith.
I was big, okay? And when you're 6'8", you play basketball because you're tall. Well, it wasn't because I was talented. I was just 6'8". You know, 6'8", if I say, hey, you got to play basketball for us. And why I look at it, you know, he should have played varsity because he was a talent.
The tryout story had followed Smith for 30 years around the world, from his international basketball career to his work in corporate America. Colleagues said he handled it with grace and self-deprecation, preferring to let others tell it rather than repeating it himself. It was all part of his ongoing connection with Jordan, which had served him well when he managed basketball promotions for the ASICS company in the 90s, and continued to serve him now with his own company, HLS Entertainment, which offered newcomers a way to break into the sports and entertainment industries. After initially agreeing to an interview, Smith declined to speak to SC for the story.
I would protect you.
If I knew you were a bad dude, I'd be like, he's a bad dude. I'm not gonna mess with him. If he's hurting people, yeah, I'm gonna have to snitch. But I wouldn't go and do a story about you because you might have children and a mother and all these different things that get affected negatively by that type of stuff. And people say, well, he should have never. And I'm like, okay, all of us have that. And I think we don't give each other enough grace in that. I'm all about transparency and telling the truth, right? But I'm not there to do it at someone else's demise and my come-upness, for example, because that money, not good money. And that's why I think I've been quiet for so long. I had this makes me mad every time I think about it. I had a producer in Hollywood, had a setup with HBO to do the coming of age story of Michael Jordan and Leroy Smith and all this kind of stuff and boo, 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 boo. And we met, we did an interview and I was telling him about it and we were going back and forth and he was like, yeah, but we need some juicy, yeah, because that's what's going to sell at HBO and this and that. And I was like, well, dude, let me help you out. There is no, and if there was, I wasn't going to tell you. I said, because Michael's still playing. I said, and what is that going to be? That's just going to be some nastiness. Ugh. And I couldn't even imagine that. And I said, hey, bro, this is not going to work. So he put out there and he told some of my friends, he's scared of success. He's done this. And that's when I basically said, yeah, I'm done with all of this. I'm going to just live my life and do my thing.
But he couldn't, because it would continue to happen to Leroy.
I think his name was Tom Lake, who did the Sports Illustrated story.
Yes.
Early 2012, the now defunct Sports Illustrated published an article by writer Tom Lake. It detailed the life and troubles of Laney High School basketball coach Clifton "Pop" Herring. The article made claims that as Coach Herring's life fell apart, Michael Jordan didn't do enough. It suggests that the burden or stigma of being the coach that cut Michael Jordan also contributed to his bleak, shuttered ending. Leroy Smith decided this was another chance to give people their grace.
I think his name was Tom Lake. He called me and I was living in Los Angeles and I had agreed to do the story, to just be a part of that story. He does the back page Sports Illustrated exposés or whatever he does. And I read some of his articles and I think he's a great writer, great reporter. And I called him back and I said, hey, listen, man, I know I said I would do this, but at this point I don't feel comfortable doing it. And I just told him my spirit just didn't feel right to talk about it at that particular time. And I think that was one of the reasons I backed away from the story, because the way I thought it was going to be and was going to be perceived out in the universe wasn't going to put Coach in a good light and Michael. And not that I want to protect them or anything like that, but in a way I do. Like, I would protect you. But when 2019 came and he passed and I went to the funeral and we had his daughter was there and a lot of the teammates were there, I got a chance to get up and speak. What I said to everybody is, let's remember the good stuff that Coach provided for us. Here was a man that took us as kids under his arm. And I'm gonna tell you, he taught me some things about being a great player, being a hard worker. If there were some other things done, I had no clue about. But when I saw his living conditions in 2019, it really shook me to my core because it's somebody that meant so much to me. And I wish I could have had a bigger impact in his life in the later years and been able to connect somehow, not just in a financial way, but just in a being there way. People would always say, oh, Michael should be doing more. I said, guys, hush. You don't know what Mike is doing. Like even at the funeral, some people were like, hey, he should be here. And I'm like, you're here. Why are you here? You know, what's your why?
When you see the last of a person in a material sense.
You understand? Michael does his stuff the way he does his stuff.
So you got to think about who he is. If he showed up, this place would be a circus.
I took a number off of Coach's house. It was one of the numbers of his address, and I've got that in my closet now. And that's probably, wow, think about it just now. That's probably one of the only things I have from Coach Herring in Laney High School is the number 5 that I took off his address on his house. And that'll always be with me. That's my connection.
Can you just walk us through the entire process?
I hadn't seen Michael probably at that time, 4 or 5 years, maybe even longer. His assistant called me and said, hey, Mike wants to fly you out to the Hall of Fame event in Springfield. Everything's set up, hotel, flights. You just show up at the airport, you're gonna get there.
Did you know ahead of time what was going to happen?
They sent us a general schedule, right? You're gonna stay at this hotel, you're gonna have all these different events, you're gonna meet some other players, and Carmelo Anthony was there. Some people I knew from way back in the day were there too, who were always part of Michael's entourage, so to speak. I had met them along the way and talked to them, like his agent, the people who he worked with at Nike. So I knew a lot of those people from a distance. So I show up and they come up and they were like, we know all about you, but we've never met Leroy Smith. Look, you're in my phone when I call Michael as Leroy.
Your name right there. Leroy.
So that was really just different to see the energy around Michael at that time. I had never been with him when he was in a group of his contemporaries or people that he was around at that time, and just to see how they act around him as an adult when I knew him as a kid, right? And so watching him grow up, so I was like, huh.
So, when did you see him?
Prior to, we had gotten a lot of Nike gear for 5 or 6 little neighborhood teams that I wanted them to make sure they provided, product and services for these kids to play in, bags, shoes, and things like that. And part of that, as a coach, I got some of that gear too. So I got the new Air Jordan sneaks, I got the sweatsuit on, I got the Nike shirt on. And Mike, he sees me, we hug, everything like that. And he goes, oh man, yeah, okay, you in the gear? Okay, cool. Then he opens my jacket. Now I know why he did that. He wanted to see if I had a stomach or not. At that time, it was chopped up. I was like, yeah, these are ass, baby. I got a 6-pack right now, bub. So, and I've been working out. Like, they call him Michael. I was calling him Mikey. He pulled me aside. He said, hey, nobody calls me Mikey. I was like, yeah, I do. So I was like, this is a little bit different.
Whatever, Michael. Everyone gets it. Truth be told, everyone got it years ago, but somehow he thinks this is a cleansing exercise.
I didn't realize it then, but in hindsight, the moment makes so much sense. Jordan the player and Jordan the myth were both impossibly perfect. But when the lights come on, there's only Jordan the man.
Worst of all, he flew his old high school teammate, Leroy Smith, to Springfield for the induction. Remember, Smith was the upperclassman his coach, Pop Herring, kept on varsity over him as a high school sophomore.
But Leroy, you were there. What did you see?
So, before him was David Robinson.
They told me I can't talk very long, so I'll just give thanks.
And David Robinson was just oozing with
Spurs organization.
Oh my God, the Spurs are the greatest organization, and just my time there, I'm so grateful. It's just awesome. You know, David Robinson, he was David Robinson, just oozing all over the place.
David Jr., my namesake.
Sugar everywhere. Everybody was like, oh my God, yeah, everybody in tears and things.
To my mom and dad, thank you for just placing a dream in my heart. You planted a seed of faith in me that's grown.
And then Mike gets up.
You know, that fire started with my parents. And then, you know, as I moved on in my career, people added wood to that fire.
And Mike is emotional for the first few minutes of things.
I've had a lot of questions.
And if you know MJ, like if you really, really know him.
Everybody's saying, well,
he is.
Why did you pick David Thompson?
He is so competitive. And I think people that are.
I know why.
At that level, have this thing inside them where they pick things that will motivate them to be successful.
So you trying to test me. And by 9 times out of 10, the second team would come back and win no matter what he did.
And when Michael started talking about the logs on his fire.
I appreciate Kevin Lockett for giving me that challenge, you know, providing that type of fire within me. He threw another log on that fire for me.
I sat back and I elbowed the guy next to me was David, our childhood friend. I said, oh, here it goes.
Boy, did they write some things about that night.
Once again, he turned the evening into something bordering between vicious and vapid. An empty exercise for a night that should have had staying power.
Last night, John Stockton and David Robinson made Jordan the man look hopelessly inferior.
When basketball wanted to celebrate Jordan as the greatest player ever, wanted to honor him for changing basketball everywhere, he was petty and punitive. What fueled his fury as a 30-something now fuels his bitterness as a lost, wandering 40-something who threatened a comeback at 50.
A lot of people like Adrian were upset, but the people who knew Mike or had insight into MJ, they were not. They thought it was the most Michael Jordan thing Michael Jordan could have done. Phil Jackson.
Totally amused at his speech, which some people thought was, you know, a little offbeat for Michael. Yeah. Totally Michael.
Yes.
Saying what motivates me. I'll tell you what motivates me. And
let me set the record straight there.
Here it comes.
Jerry Reinsdorf, even if he doesn't think you should look up to athletes.
I'd rather idolize Jonas Salk, who invented the polio vaccine, than whoever the greatest athlete in the world was.
Because he knows that that is exactly what made Michael Jordan great.
Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player who ever played. He said what he wanted to say that night, and it's not up to me to grade it or interpret it.
What kind of memories were you brought back to when Michael mentioned the headache story?
So I had to go in his office and sit down with him. I said, Jerry, you know, I feel like I should play more than 14 minutes. I'm practicing 2 hours. He says, MJ, I think I have to protect the long term of investment that we've invested in you. And I said, Jerry, I really think I should be able to play. He said, let me ask you this. He said, if you had a headache, and you know, at that time it was about 10% chance that I can re-injure my ankle or my foot. He says, if you have a headache and you got 10 tablets and one of them is coated with cyanide, would you take the Tylenol? And I looked at him, I said, how bad is the headache? Depending on how bad the headache. Jerry looked at me and said, you okay, I guess that's a good answer, you can go back and play. He let me allow to go back and play.
Well, it's hard to imagine that story took place about 23 years ago. His memory of it wasn't exactly perfect, but it did, you know, explain what a competitor he was, that he was willing to risk his entire career just to get back and play basketball.
And of course, Leroy knew this.
Because I understand what motivates him and what drives him. And it's all of the stuff that he was saying. And after David Robinson.
To my boys, I hope that this gives you something that you want to live up to, that makes you want to be proud of the Robinson name and to carry it on. And
it was such a dichotomy.
Obviously, you see my kids. You know, I think that you guys have a heavy burden. I wouldn't want to be you guys if I had to.
In two ends of the spectrum that people were like, oh my God, why is Michael just coming down on everybody? It's like, no, that's who Michael is. I tell people, I said, if you like Michael Jordan, don't meet him.
But this is not supposed to be about Michael Jordan. Yes, his gravity is sometimes too hard to escape, even in editing. This is about Leroy and his perspective that night. But how did you feel?
Here's how I look at it, because I have some buddies who, for lack of a better word, they can't stand Michael. I got some buddies like, yo, man, dude, you should have blah, 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 blah. Here's my honest opinion about it. Number one, I was at the Hall of Fame, and that energy just overwhelmed me. And to look around and see all these incredible future and current Hall of Famers, George Gervin in the crowd, it was just all of these folks. I was done.
Because limits, like fears.
I feel blessed beyond belief that I had a connection with these folks.
Are often just an illusion.
And then on the stage, arguably the best player in the world ever to lace him up. Ever.
Oh, don't laugh.
And then, of course,
and then there's Leroy Smith. Now, you gotta think that's a myth. Leroy Smith was a guy, when I got cut, he made the team on the varsity team, and he's here tonight.
When he said that, it was so crazy because the cameras from ESPN just kind of rolled up, like right there, and 30 seconds later, my cell phone was just blowing up. We see you at the Hall of Fame. Oh my God, I didn't know you played with Jordan. Why didn't you ever tell me? I was like, I don't know. Yeah, never came up like
Still
that.
The same 6'7" guy. He's not any bigger. Probably his game is about the same.
And for him to always have to mention my name as part of the driving force behind him being the GOAT, that just sets me at this next level. Because I'm the guy that motivated the best of all time. So that was the energy I had. And like I said, I grew up with him, so I knew where all this was coming from. So it didn't hit me in a negative space. But I could feel the heaviness in the room.
All of those guys were competitors against each other at one time. He and Charles Barkley were great friends. And during that time, they weren't talking too much.
Magic Johnson, George Gervin.
So yeah,
it was a so-called freeze.
I felt the room get a little tight.
Evidently, I haven't proved enough to these guys. I got to prove to them that I deserve what I've gotten on this level.
But in my mind, I was like, that's when I was shaking my head. I was like, that's Mike. That's Michael. But if you grew up with him, you knew that. And you knew it didn't come from malice.
Being part of Michael Jordan's life, having an impact on him, whether you knew it or not, it meant two things. Number one, you would forever be stuck in his orbit. And number two, he will never let you go. And for Leroy, a man more interested in moving on.
I don't even have anything like from that time. Like I don't even have like any high school or college pictures or anything up in that realm. My dad has the pair of Air Jordan ones that I gave him years ago.
Shoes so hot, you should keep them in the fridge. So let Leroy give it to you.
Leroy would be dragged back into his role in a very public way.
I was working at NBC Universal in Los Angeles, and I was getting these random phone calls. And I would see the number, and I was like, I don't know who that is. I'm not answering that. And then one day, I'm sitting in my office, the phone rang. I picked up the phone, and they're like, oh, we're so-and-so search firm, and da-da-da-da, and we've been looking for you for 2 years. And I was like, well, I've been in Los Angeles for the past 15 years. You know, I'm here. I'm not hiding. But of course, I was going by Harvest Smith.
To no fault of his own, while minding his own business, Michael Jeffrey Jordan decided in the months leading up to his induction into the Basketball Hall of Fame, he wants to grease the runway by making a huge spectacle of his headcanon. As MJ and his team at Nike prepared a truly bizarre, yet specifically familiar, early 90s themed multimedia ad campaign centered around who else? Leroy Smith.
Finally, they got me and they said, hey, Michael said you're a fun-loving guy and we want to do this whole skit thing for his leading up to his 2009. And they started laughing. They were like, we're looking at doing Dave Chappelle.
Is anyone up for a game of basketball?
And we think this is going to be fun. This is what it's going to be. And then, of course, Dave Chappelle had his situation. He went to Africa, so it became Charlie Murphy.
Michael Jordan was the greatest player ever, but even he needed inspiration.
That's right. You too can learn how to play the type of basketball that would inspire anybody. Introducing Get Your Basketball On with me, Leroy Smith, the world's most influential influence on Michael Jordan ever. After I beat out MJ for the last spot on our varsity team, he went on to become the greatest basketball player of all time. Coincidence? No way!
Okay, here's the part. After all he went through, more or less keeping a positive attitude, but effectively separating himself, and I'm serious, this isn't a joke, Harvest had just told me this a little earlier.
The thing, I think now that we talk more, one of the things where I don't know if I consciously pulled away from the story or something is because I didn't want my life to be a caricature, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So how did Leroy make this work?
And I said to them, I said, well, listen, I got kids now. I got this and that, and I don't want to do anything that would disparage my family. I said, if it's fun, no problem. I'll sign off on anything and let's negotiate. And they said, we'll pay you. We'll pay you to use your name. I said, excellent. And I said, well, send me over the contract. Let me look at it over the weekend and I'll get back to you on Monday. So it came over the weekend and I'm having fun with this thing. I countered and I just threw some outlandish numbers out there. And they called me back and they were like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And I said, well, this is Michael Jordan. This is the greatest of all time. This is the GOAT. I said, I know what you guys paid Little Penny.
Hey, Penny! What do they call these shoes anyway?
Air Penny.
Said, I think I'm worth more than Little Penny.
But I was having so much fun doing this whole thing. And I said, what about, sneakers, T-shirts? I said, I'd rather get a percentage of sales than, cold cash up front. I said, if you'd have caught me 20 years ago, I would have done this for just product. Just send me some Nike shoes. But, older man, got a family, got a mortgage. You're like, hey, okay, let's look at the long haul.
See, it came down to Mike and I for the final spot on the team, and Coach pulled me aside and was like, Leroy, if you don't play varsity, we're going to have to forfeit the seat.
I said, even if you don't do it, it'll be in the contract. I'll frame it. My kids years later can look at it and they can bring their friends over and go, oh, see, my dad did play with Michael Jordan. So finally they said, okay, we'll do it. They put it in the contract and went on with the campaign.
And what happened next? I gave him a taste for greatness. I showed him what it was like to be great, and he remembered what it felt like not to be great and to be fed worms by force, by me.
Cool. I said, I want to come down to the set and meet, Charlie Murphy, God rest his soul, and some of the other folks.
Take us inside this exciting new film that you're creating. Well, this film is about a superhero by the name of Leroy Smith. His superpower is being able to motivate other people to reach their fullest potential. See, in the scene we about to do, Leroy Smith helps out a young ball player by the name of Miguel Juarez.
This is the list for the varsity team.
I'll never get to play on the varsity team, Leroy.
Don't talk like that, Miguel. I'll continue to believe in you, even if you don't believe in yourself.
Really?
6 months later, they called and said, hey, we're doing T-shirts. I said, excellent. Remember the contract?
Me, Leroy Smith, always motivated.
And you're currently petitioning the Hall of Fame to induct you for?
My contributions to the game.
I said, what about shoes? They said, we're not going to do shoes. I said, okay, cool.
A lot of people say that without you, there would be no Michael Jordan.
Of course there'd be a Michael Jordan. But would he be the world's greatest basketball player?
6 months later, they called. They said, hey, man, we're going to do a limited run of 10,000 pair of Air Jordan Leroy Smiths.
It's time to get your groove on by getting your Leroy on. Now get your basketball on. Oh, baby.
I said, awesome. What about the colorway? I don't care. Whatever color you make it. Remember the contract.
And Jordan would continue to use Leroy's name and influence throughout his career. He would introduce himself to strangers as Leroy Smith. He would check into hotels as Leroy Smith. He even carved his initials into picnic tables as Leroy Smith.
Yeah, you know, you made a couple of bucks on some shoes, and you know, I got my dad a pair, I got my son a pair, a couple of friends a pair. I don't even have a pair.
Oh, I was going to say,
the pair I got, I gave away to a friend of mine who, long story, he didn't have any sneakers to play in. I said, dude, I got something for you here. Just play in these. Have a great time. And my accountant, back in the day, called me and said, hey, man, give me a size 9. I signed it. He put it in a case. And, yeah, there you go. But that's the story. And so, yeah, it was a business deal. Then, like I said, I was there at the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and when he said that, it was so crazy because I was with another childhood friend of ours that played with us, David, and when he said that, the cameras from ESPN just kind of rolled up.
Wait. There's just so many questions left. Like, how tall is he actually? Didn't you notice? From the very beginning, all the way to 2009, every time Michael Jordan talked about Leroy Smith, he says,
to my friend and I, Leroy Smith, who was about 6'6", 6'7" at the time.
Or
he's still the same 6'7" guy. He's not any bigger.
And Leroy consistently claims,
I was big, okay? And when you're 6'8", you play basketball.
Or
6'8", like I named Harvest.
So what is it? Also, would he have preferred to play JV instead of varsity that sophomore year? I mean, he really didn't play at all that sophomore year.
I would have rather played on the JV because I would have got more playing time, probably matured as a player better because I set the bench a lot.
Also, when did Fred Lynch actually start working at Laney? We didn't get that answer.
I'm gonna have to call somebody who was on the JV and find out.
Say something like,
I'm gonna put you on game right now. What up, boy? You good?
And how good is he? How good was he? Like, how was his international basketball career? He played in Europe and Japan. Was he any good?
Because at one point, I led the nation of France in scoring.
But then how did he start his college career with the nickname Spaz?
Took a big bounce, and when it bounced, I went up to kind of catch the bounce and bring it down, and somehow I tripped. I don't even know to this day what happened, but I ended up on the ground. And when I got up, the coaches had turned around, and they were laughing. You could see them shaking. All the players were laughing, and I was like, dang. So I got to run back down court, kind of shook my head. And Tyrone Stevenson, when we got into the locker room, and he had a thick Southern accent. And he said, yo, your new name is Spaz. So for a whole year, that's all they called me. Okay, Spaz. And so I took it. You had to take it.
That's all. I mean, those things hurt sometimes.
Yeah. It cut deep, but
it can get to you.
Yeah, it can get to you, but I was determined to turn that around.
Then, how did he end his college career with the much better nickname Hands?
So my senior year, they called me Hands. They were like, just throw it in there. He gonna catch it. Just throw it in there. And I used to do 1,000, seriously, 1,000 off the toss back. Just doom.
Him and MJ, they're like the same age. Does he think he could take him now?
But here's the deal. I will challenge him now. I know I'm in better shape than he is right now.
I'll
put it out there. 101.
We'll put it out there.
And what on earth is he doing now?
You know, sometimes you can hold on to something for so long and it defines you all through your core, and tapestries make up our lives, right? You know, I had children, incredible wife, and I played in all these different countries and had so many different friends, and just so many different things happen. And I was like, yeah, Michael's doing his thing. He's going to be the greatest of all time. And I'm over here doing my thing. And I got into entertainment and television and all that type of stuff. So our lives went these totally two different paths. And, you know, when he became Michael Jordan, he had a whole different set of friends, different set of people he hung out with. We were childhood buddies, you know what I mean? But as adults, our lives just went these different directions. And you know, I have some friends, they say, man, you should always lead with, I'm the guy that beat up Michael Jordan. I've said that was 1977. Come on, that was so long ago. People would look at me kind of crazy going, hey, I'm the guy that beat up Michael Jordan, 40 years ago. It's like, yeah. What have you done in those last 40 years? So this is where I'm at.
That's a funny part of it, because a lot of people go through their entire lives never having something that breaks through to bigger society.
Yeah.
But then there's that weird feeling that when it happens earlier in life, or it happens when you're young, that you have to shed it. You have to redefine yourself or become something different. When in fact, when we're all dead and gone, like, our stories get condensed into these legends, these myths, if you're lucky.
Sound bites.
Yeah, and it's like, well, that was pretty darn successful. That's something to be proud of. I
That
don't care if
defines
you're 90, right? That's what's always been interesting, is that as Michael Jordan, I'm not on a first name basis.
You can call him Michael. If he asks you, you tell him, Big Roy said you could call him Michael. I got it.
I didn't have an alert set for Roy.
Right.
Smith. I had one for Harvest, though.
Right.
But as he elevated and became the Michael Jordan, he kept telling this story.
Right.
And I always just wondered, like, okay, so I set the alerts. I made T-shirts with your face on it and your name.
Yeah.
I only
Bless
sold
you,
a couple
man.
of them.
I'd like to get a couple of copies of those.
You're gonna get them. You're gonna get all of this stuff. But the idea was, eventually I wanted to talk to you, right? I wanted to figure this out and draw you out somehow. One day. But as he got bigger, I thought that, okay, either you're getting paid from all of it, right? Because they're using your name a lot. Maybe he made you sign some contract while you're, some random night you didn't, and he owns the rights to your name.
Right.
Or maybe you're a little crazy, who knows?
Right, a little bit.
Or you genuinely are entertained and appreciate this kind of storytelling and this process. And that's kind of where I am. I'm like, if I was wrapped up in this, the whole thing would just be kind of amusing to me, where I'd be like, yeah, that's fine, let's do this.
Yeah.
So I assume it's some combination of the three.
Yeah, you're dead on the money.
Well, I don't know. We don't know. I don't have the answers to any of these questions, because I want to talk about this. This is my conclusion.
I wanted to make sure you understood. You made a mistake, dude.
This little chuckle here. It's the only time Jordan really laughs himself. When I dove into this story, I didn't know how much agency Leroy had in any of this. I wondered if this was a case of Jordan bludgeoning another rival into submission, putting Leroy in that not uncommon human scenario where it's just easier to go along with a thing because fighting against it seems impossible. But looking back at this entire project, literally, I just watched the whole thing again. Maybe it's simple. See, what I learned is that MJ doesn't lie. Well, he doesn't lie emotionally. Everything you need to know is always right there on his face. See, Jordan builds worlds in his mind, and he draws power from them, like Dr. Strange. But he's not delusional. He doesn't live in those worlds. And that is apparent in his speech. Every grievance, insult, or petty exchange that he laid out, he immediately couches it in reason, sometimes displaying a grasp of contradicting sides of a same process. And there's tons of examples in his speech.
He said organization wins championships. I said, I didn't see organization playing with the flu. Granted, I think organization put together teams, but at the end of the day, the teams got to go out and play. So in essence, I think the players win the championship, and the organization has something to do with it, don't get me wrong. And then you had all your media naysayers. Oh, scoring champion can't win the NBA title, or you You're not as good as Magic Johnson. You're not as good as Larry Bird. You're good, but you're not as good as those guys. You know, I had to listen to all this. Now, I'm not saying they were wrong. I may have looked at them from a different perspective, you know, but at the same time, as a basketball player, I'm trying to become the best that I can. The day that he was on the Sports Illustrated and he named 4 starters and he didn't name me, that burned me up. Now, he had his own vision about giving a freshman that exposure, and I totally understand that, but from a basketball sense, I deserve to be on that Sports Illustrated.
But the one person he didn't even hint at thanking or couching in some sort of conciliatory way was Leroy. The man with the least autonomy of any of Jordan's targets. To us outsiders, he lives completely within a Jordan story. Even Brian Russell got a kind of qualifier.
I hate to do it to him, but he's such a nice guy.
Buzz got a notion of grace.
Buzz was a great person. It wasn't a fault of his. It was just my competitive nature.
Leroy got none of that. For many reasons, as we learned, we didn't know Leroy outside of this one moment. A moment Jordan clearly wanted to keep him in, keep him stuck. His story, his game, his height, the entire idea of him. But it was a directing decision that kept us from seeing the emotional truth attached to this. The one that Jordan is incapable of hiding, ever. See, choosing to stay on Leroy for this whole time here and not cutting back to Mike, we never got to see the smile, the inside smirk that pairs with this singular chuckle. So yes, MJ was prepared to compensate Leroy anytime he wanted to use his name. That doesn't solve everything. Leroy did have to figure out how to navigate this reality for himself, even effectively giving up the name, turning it over to folklore. But is this just a strained and tortured, calcified, transactional relationship, always existing in the background like dull neck pain, a pain occasionally activated whenever Leroy sees a strange number come across his phone? I didn't know. And we did learn it wasn't all fun and games. By the way, did I tell you that they made an actual Leroy Smith game as part of their campaign?
Before we could fly, one man inspired Michael Jordan to touch the sky. And now, he's about to touch you.
I motivated Michael Jordan to become the greatest basketball player ever.
The man who motivated Michael Jordan presents Leroy Smith's 2-on-2 Hall of Fame Challenge.
Who are you to think I can't motivate you?
4 players, 3 courts, 1.
Okay, anyway, it's something about the chuckle, and maybe the fact that Leroy is still the only person to have beaten Michael Jordan at something, and then Jordan never got him back. It all made me realize, oh, maybe these guys are actually friends. Like an old buddy. The kind that you just don't see all the time, but whenever you run into them or you do connect with them again, it's like old times. So I called Leroy up again.
He's been, I don't even know if his life has led him into a different group of people because his life, you know, billionaire, owner of the team, greatest ever, traveled the world, met presidents medal of honor, things like that. But at the end of the day, if we were all in here, it'd just be Michael, and
Yeah.
we'd be razzing him.
And that's what the laugh was, what it sounded like to me from the stage.
Now you got it. That's what it was.
This guy's not the mark. He's not being taken advantage of. He's not a fool.
Right.
He's in on it.
That's exactly
The
what
laugh.
he was. Because he said he's 6'7", his game is probably still the same, and you know, I wanted to stand up and be like, yeah, it was good enough to beat you then, it's good enough to beat you now. But it was his moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, we would all get together and probably just start talking about what we did in high school and laughing and some of the crazy things that we did back in high school and how he used to wear white socks with his black shoes and stuff like that.
Now, I'm not saying they were wrong. I may have looked at them from a different perspective.
It's like there's a point where it's like we know what we're doing here, guys, right?
Yeah.
We're creating a cartoon character.
Exactly.
And if
Of
you
a
all
person.
understand that, that's fine. But it's that it floats between those realities. It's like none of this is really true, but we all enjoy doing this for the sports, and it doesn't really matter.
That's why I like the color of your videos, man.
It's tongue in cheek. It's fun.
I like that. I
serious.
like the way you do this because it makes you think. Like, yeah, wow, okay, let's put this in perspective, because that's what it is, man. We lose perspective. I think now that we talk more. One of the things where I don't know if I consciously pulled away from the story or something is because I didn't want my life to be a caricature, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And now it's at a point where I have enough in my book, chapters in my book, that it's a chapter in my book, but it's not the whole book. So now it's almost like it's a perfect time to start talking about another chapter as I move into this other part of my life. You know what I'm saying? Because, well, what else did you do? Well, I did this and I did this and I got that and blah, 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 and all these things that we all have as human beings, chapters in our book. But we're sometimes our worst critics, and we don't believe that our life was impactful or had meaning. Most people like, oh, I've never done anything with my life. And I'm like, yeah, you did. Let's start talking about it. And, you know, one of the things I was talking about the other night was like, I look at moms and look at what my wife has done. She had always been a stay-at-home mom. And I was like, man, she ran a corporation 24/7. And we don't give enough praise to that. You know what I mean? And the way our society is built, we don't look at things like that. Okay, yeah, you did this, all right. But what did you do to him change in society? Like, okay,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
Babe Ruth, you knock home runs, but did that really change society? Did it really change society? But no, I respect what he did because that was iconic. He praise him in what he did. He did it great. But let's not go overboard now. I got these little goalies, right? They're 5, 6-year-olds. The soccer ball goes in, their world is just crushed because they just got scored on. And the parents are like, stop the ball, Karen, stop the ball, Billy. And, you know, he's, you know, so I go over to little Billy and I high five him. Boom. I said, let me show you how to catch this ball when it comes at you. And I show him how to do it, scoop it up. And we may practice 3 or 4 times. Now, mind you, the game is stopped. Everybody's on the field just kind of watching because I'm the referee. Then I call him in the middle. We huddle up. 1, 2, 3, wide. 1, 2, 3, wide. Because I understand how important that is. That moment right there can change a person's life forever. So that's what I'm thinking all the time. I was like, okay, how can I impact whoever I come across at that present moment? And man, I fail so many days because I'm like, that was a moment. I missed it. That was a moment. I missed it. But when I can catch a moment, man, I feel so great. It's like, God, hopefully that kid or that man or that whatever. And, you know, I've hugged people and we started crying. And I'm like, why are you crying? I don't know, but all right, now get on out of here. I may never see him again in life. But that moment, bro, is what's key to me. And I'm stacking up moments every single day. Like my purpose right now in life, my purpose is what you guys, what we're talking about right now. This is the most important thing to me in my life right now, this moment. True story.
Me too.
Real talk.
Yeah.
Real talk.
Yeah.
I mean, we're kind of just chatting now, right? but when we got in contact on Twitter, or whatever it's called now.
Well, I was gonna say I have to jump off actually in 5 minutes, but so I'll stop recording. But I don't know if Emio, do you want to keep recording or no?
Yeah, I'll keep recording. But I think.
Okay.
Are you looking for something?
I motivated Michael Jordan to become the greatest basketball player ever. Who are you to think I can't motivate you? You.
Motivate him. Motivate him.
Let's go. This is my gift to the game. Yes, this is my gift to the game. This is my gift to the game. It's my gift to the game. Yeah. Let's go. The crossover king, no look pass. Step onto the court, I'ma kick your Watch how I do this, you will see. Ain't nobody else in the game like me. I'm ballin', and I feel like a winner. You do too when you see me on TV. Yeah, that's why you got my DVD. This is my gift to the game. It's my gift to the game. I give it to you. This is my gift to the game. This is my gift to the game. Yeah.
Punch. Now bring that beat back.
Let's go. Tell me who else could do what I do. Write, sing, act, direct, and produce. When I give a speech, it's a standing ovation. One word motivates a whole nation. Everybody's got a little Leroy Smith inside. Just look and you'll find me. You can do anything, be anyone. Take it from the king of motivation. This is my gift to the game. It's not for the fame, not for the money. Said I do it all for the love of the game. All for the love of the game. That's why I do it, baby. 'Cause it's my gift to the game, oh yeah. Let's go.
Okay. This is clearly just bizarro MJ's playground. We've got baby kid and play here. Like, the music video. Here's the Jordan music video. Remember this earlier? This is funny. It feels like he's honoring Leroy authentically here. He's giving him his own Leroy moment where everything's reversed. It's just everything's odd about this campaign. It feels like it's made out of love. It feels like it's made out of friendship. It feels like it's poking fun at him as much as it's poking fun at Michael. I'll put the links to all the full-length ad campaigns in the description so you can enjoy these and analyze them yourself. But this is hilarious because they just redid the original 2 videos that started the whole thing, but gave it to Leroy.
How'd that taste?
And you're worried that you're getting old and slow and no team wants you.
Something like that.
Well, you're lucky. I specialize in old and slow.
Yeah, I know. That's why I signed with you.
Oh. Excuse me.
Shazam!
That's right. That's right. So Mr. Palmer and Coach Avery. That's right. I forgot all about Coach Avery. I know Coach Wolf was there. So Coach Wolf was the junior year for the JV. Coach Avery was the sophomore year, and Lynch came the end of the sophomore year.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. All right.